This is Bella Shaw. The local results should be known Tuesday on the new General Motors contract. UAW officials expect 2,000 of the 5,400 local members to vote. Union officials think the contract will be approved, even though a major provision will not apply to local members, the part guaranteeing income to high seniority workers who have been laid off. Most new workers at the local GM plant haven't worked there long enough to build up that much seniority. The contract also promises to keep some plants open and enables workers to engage in profit sharing. If approved, the contract will take effect April 12th. Bella Shaw, Action 4 at the UAW headquarters in Midwest City.
Gusting winds of up to 60 miles per hour swept through parts of Edmond last Friday. The north side of the Edmond High School auditorium was hard hit, resulting in damages over $30,000. Surveyors were on the scene today, checking the metal stripping and insulation that was ripped off the building. With the exposure at the top of the wall, dirt and gravel made its way into the stage area, making that portion of the building unusable for a few weeks. Well, that factor alone has canceled a very important event to the students.
Well, I was going to be Dolly in Hello Dolly, and it was my first lead, so it's very disappointing to me since it's my senior year to all of a sudden it's not there. And the kids all feel the same way, but our teachers are afraid that we blame them for everything, and there's no way we can blame them. It's not their fault. It's just something that happened. And I think we're all accepting it pretty good. It hurts, but it's just something to live with, I suppose.
There are numerous events scheduled for May inside the school auditorium, including a band and choir concert. Well, school officials are hopeful those events can and will be held. Carol Lambert, Action 4 at Edmond High School.
The question is, who pulled the trigger taking the life of Telex Chairman Roger Wheeler? Earlier this week, the finger was pointed at Patrick Henry Early in custody on a drug charge.
He is considered a suspect, one of several, in the killing of Roger Wheeler.
He is not a suspect in the Wheeler homicide.
Well, is he or isn't he? District Attorney Bob Macy has cooperated with Tulsa detectives in that Wheeler case, and we ask him if Early should be written off as a suspect.
In my opinion, Early continues to be a suspect in that case. I haven't seen anything yet that would convince me that he should be positively eliminated as a suspect.
Macy believes another local man, Dennis Bates Fletcher, should also be considered a suspect. Fletcher's federal record includes a probated forgery conviction in 1970, an illegal firearms charge in 1971. That was overturned in 1972. A bank robbery conviction in 1973. And another firearms charge that was dismissed in January. Fletcher was out on parole when a family-owned bail bond company was raided last November. He was charged with concealing stolen property.
His reputation is that of being a very tough individual. He's respected or feared by other members of the criminal element. The Wheeler murder case, of course, is being worked by the Tulsa Police Department. My understanding is that Fletcher does continue to be a suspect in that killing.
Regardless of who killed Wheeler, Macy points out it's up to Tulsa detectives to draw the net on a case that has been unsolved since last May. Larry Otis, Action 4, County Courthouse.
But it is a situation that has come up repeatedly on Northwest 23rd Street. It is an old water line, and the city has had a lot of trouble with it. Now the pavement is buckling, and the crews have had to dig holes in the pavement searching for the exact location of the break. It would cost a lot of money to fix, and it is one of the things that comes up invariably whenever the city starts talking about capital improvements.
This main is broken on an average of 3, maybe 4 times a year at various points in a 2-mile stretch. What we attempt to do is when we repair a section or a joint or two a pipe at a time rather than make spot repairs or patch repairs. That way we've eliminated one possible point for a future break. Now the pipe is in need of replacement, however it's a major project with an expense that exceeds what's budgeted in capital improvement funds now.
Few homes were affected by the break, but a number of businesses were, like this gas station that offers a free car wash, but there was no water. Plus, few people could even find their way through the detour to fill up with gas. Across the street at the Sears store, the basement filled up with water when it came trickling down out of a telephone connection. Miraculously, the telephone service was not interrupted, but the workers' routines were. They spent the morning sweeping and vacuuming the water away. No merchandise was damaged. Upstairs at a little restaurant, water was brought in from elsewhere to make coffee. The restaurant had originally thought of closing, but decided to stay open.
Be faced with some kind of a test in order to show that one is worthy of the United States, and that test is one booklet called Testing American Style, where you can understand the reading material that is required. And I thought this would be outstanding. We have others, and should...
Students from one racial group score consistently lower
in regular classes just as soon as possible. Some, because they have not learned to read and write in their native tongue, have even greater problems, because if they can't read and write in their native tongue, it's pretty difficult to teach them to do so in a second language.
Fraternities are part of college life, and beer drinking is part of fraternity life. Right now it's okay to drink 3-2 beer at the age of 18, so it's allowed in fraternity houses and OU dorm rooms under certain conditions. But the state legislature is talking about raising the age limit, and that would eliminate legal drinking in OU housing. It's no surprise that most students are against it.
Well, if they did it, I think it'd be kind of silly, because if people are going to drink, they're going to drink, and it doesn't matter.
It's just like the liquor law in this state. I see them making raids like once or twice a month right before elections, like they do every year anyway. And I don't see it being enforceable.
But I think they're just too far removed from the situation. Being in the Senate and everything, and they're not back in college.
Student Congress leaders plan to oppose the bill. They say college students are adults and shouldn't be discriminated against.
We don't live at home anymore. We're at college. A lot of 18-year-olds are at college, or else they're out and they have jobs and they're out working, some of them raising families of their own, and they're mature enough to do that, but they're not mature enough to drink. I really don't see that that is good logic.
Not only will legal drinking activity come to an end inside fraternity houses, but some of those outside will have to stop too, like this chug-a-lug contest this Friday night, which goes towards charity. However, there's not much chance of that happening, because we talked to one of the authors of the bill today, and he says it will probably die in the House. Ted Brown, Action 4 in Norman.
The mill levies generate more than $25 million in local school money. That means city schools can be maintained at the present level. Oklahoma City has the lowest mill levy of any city in Oklahoma County. That's why school officials had asked for more money in a bond issue, which was defeated 2 weeks ago. But School Superintendent Dr. Tom Payzant is going to be cautious and not interpret Tuesday's victory as a signal to try the bond issue again.
Well, I think what we see in yesterday's election is that people are making the distinction between the annual millage election and a bond election, which, in the case of the one we offered several weeks ago, would have required a tax increase. So the voters are making that distinction, and we have to look at that distinction before coming back with another plan if we do in the fall.
This money that comes in that was voted in yesterday, the millage, that just keeps you where you are, right?
Right. It means that we can levy the same level of property taxes for next year as we have this year, and it will retain the school tax rate at the same level.
So even if the bond issue comes up again in the fall, at least the school superintendent has one less thing to worry about. Bellishaw Action 4 at the school administration building.
Pretty good.
72-year-old Cornelius Maple boarded a bus at the Oklahoma City bus barn this afternoon. But this isn't Maple's usual bus. His normal vehicle is awaiting repair across the parking lot. Yesterday's accident creased a couple of fenders and dented a bumper. So Maple will ferry school children in a borrowed bus for a while. Some parents of kids hurt in yesterday's accident have complained that Maple drives erratically. They say their children are scared to ride on his bus. Maple maintains he's always been cautious.
I'm qualified as a safe driver, I suppose. Yeah. Been driving 62 years, approximately. I always have driven a car, a truck. And I've never had any kind of a moving violation on a vehicle.
Ever had any complaints from your passengers about your driving or anything? Has anybody complained?
None. Never had any complaints. Especially the larger kids.
We checked out Maple's good driver claim with his boss, School District Transportation Director Doug Markham. Department of Public Safety records indicate that a minor accident last December and yesterday's mishap are the only two blemishes in 6 decades of driving. A further check shows that the 72-year-old has always passed his physical examinations with flying colors. In fact, Maple's boss says he'd never heard any complaints until today about Maple's driving.
To the best of my knowledge, I have never had a complaint on Mr. Maple's driving, either from parents of the students that ride that bus or from patrons.
If you had a son or a daughter attending Parmalee Elementary School, how would you feel about them riding on a bus with Mr. Maple?
I'd feel that my child was safe on Mr. Maple's bus. I would not hesitate. I wouldn't hesitate to ride on this bus myself.
Markham has changed Maple's bus route in order to avoid a confrontation with angry parents. Maple thinks that's a good way to put the issue to rest. Scott Wallace, Action 4, Northeast Oklahoma City.
I'll wait down the hallway.
And I looked up and I seen the tail section go east, and then a big old black smoke. And I run to the house and told my wife to call for some help, a helicopter crash, and I jumped in the pickup and come over here, and it was blazing when I got here.
If this was golf, it'd be all over the place. Jerry Adams and Lane Jerry Adams from Channel 4. Larry, the sportscaster here is hitting it down. See that on the news. Now we'll again remind you we have a celebrity from each team. We have a representative of the sponsors, the individual, of course, it's all the big brothers and big sisters. We also have a qualified bowler. We also have the Government's trial. And one of them has got some very good stuff.
Police believe they had just left the Giles concert at the Myriad. Ticket stubs and a souvenir hat were found in and around the car. While traveling west on Reno, the group began racing with another vehicle. The car went out of control and hit this gas meter protection rail, causing it to flip over. The driver, 22-year-old Charles Bean Jr., died on impact as he was thrown from the car. 16-year-old Kim Potter was also thrown from the car. She was taken to St. Anthony Hospital, where she underwent surgery and is listed in critical condition with multiple chest and abdomen injuries. 20-year-old Chuck Hummel, who was riding in the back seat, was also taken to the hospital. He was treated and released. Sherry Sellers, Action 4. When firemen arrived on the scene, the vat was glowing red. 4 units responded, ready to hose down the fire, but they decided that could be dangerous.
The primary danger was because there was a large vat full of an asphalt product, and this product, when you put water on it, asphalt has a tendency to explode when it's real hot. The vat was fairly full, and I didn't want to fill it and overflow it, have fire all over the building. I didn't want to put water on the product and have it blowing up, so to speak, and spraying it out all over us.
So they decided to put the fire out with the dry chemical, but weren't successful, mainly because of equipment problems. The firemen were forced to use the hoses after all and hope for the best. The water did finally extinguish the flames without anything spraying over. The situation was a dangerous one for firefighters. 2 men were injured when a piece broke off and fell into the vat, splattering hot asphalt on their faces. The 2 will have blisters where it hit them. Firemen remained on the scene after the fire was out to cool down the vat and make sure there was no more trouble. Sherry Sellers, Action 4 in South Oklahoma City.
It wasn't the sky, it was the ceiling in the House meeting room. It was during the joint committee meeting on county government Monday. The room was packed, a member was speaking, then there was a loud crack and part of the ceiling rained down, narrowly missing some members.
I understand it was a total shock, and a lot of people were very thankful because, as you know, those things are heavier than bricks, and from 25, 30 feet it would have probably killed somebody if it hit one of them.
Usually all we have to worry about is who is sitting in the seat of government. Now we have to worry about something falling on him while he's sitting there. It'll never do to have some of our legislators hit in the head by falling pieces of plaster, despite the fact that some people would say it might do some of them some good. Officials are going to check all of the ceilings in the Capitol now and make whatever repairs are necessary. Ted Brown, Action 4 at the State Capitol.
The deduction Boren is talking about allows oil and gas producers to deduct from their tax bill drilling costs such as labor, mud, rig rental, and contractor fees. Boren says if the tax deduction for intangible drilling cost is eliminated, Oklahoma could lose $2.6 billion in gross state product and about 130,000 jobs. And what does Larry Pruitt, chairman of the board of Latco Energy, feel this will do to the oil business?
I believe the oil business would be over with for all practical purposes of new drilling.
But the Oklahoma oil man doesn't feel this will ever be approved.
The gas shortage would be, in 6 months, we would be where we were 2.5 years ago when the gas lines, we would fall back in that situation, and the government, it would run oil prices up to $80 a barrel, something that the government right now can't live with.
Boren, however, says he doesn't know how much support he'll get from outside oil and gas producing states to keep the deduction out of a compromised budget package. Ben McCain, Action 4, Oklahoma City.
It was on I-40 and Morgan Road that the driver of a truck with toxic chemicals from the Department of Defense noticed the tires smoking. The truck was filled with 55-gallon barrels of toxic chemicals on their way from Memphis, Tennessee to Oakland, California.
The driver of the truck, similar to these, pulled into his company's truck yard and noticed a ruptured barrel. He then summoned the fire department. Fire officials had to determine exactly what kind of chemical they were dealing with. It turned out to be a cleaning solvent known as crylic acid, which can be highly fatal.
It may be very toxic. We need to know what type of an agent, extinguishing agent. It could be reactive with water, so there's a lot of data that we have to make the correct decision.
Was this dangerous today, in your opinion?
It could have been. Could have been very dangerous.
City resident Jack Hockmeister has long taken interest in the transportation of toxic materials and nuclear wastes. He fought hard for an ordinance that would have prohibited their transportation unless rigid controls and regulations were put in place.
And the city of Oklahoma City just felt that they didn't want to have this type of control. They wanted to leave the private enterprise and the Department of Defense and the federal government relatively unfettered. And the ordinance said, no, let's not. Let's have some restrictions so that we can keep the streets and bridges safe for Oklahoma City people.
There were no injuries in the mishap, although the two men in the truck may suffer some side effects later. Later in the afternoon, workers from Tinker Air Force Base came to transport the toxic chemical back to their facility. Since it is government property, Tinker will have to decide how to dispose of it. Bella Shaw, Action 4 in Southwest Oklahoma City.
The cute cartoon characters, once only seen on the funny page, are now commonly marketed on perforated sheets coated with acid, an hallucinogenic drug. There's been talk that the blotter acid comes in the form of transfers and stickers, but that's apparently not the case in Oklahoma.
It's just a question of people getting their identification straight. I think what was mainly said yesterday from a story that I can't find out who it was attributed to, some people out of Dallas, was that we were having a lot of problems with LSD being on stickers and tattoos and that sort of thing. Once again, what we want to stress is we have never seen anything documented in the state on stickers or iron ores or transfers. What we see is blotter acid.
The drug scene is making a comeback, and Mitchell says parents need to be informed about the various drug paraphernalia and watch for behavioral changes in their child. He notes that drugs are often marketed as funny cartoon characters, but there's nothing funny about their effect. Debbie Mash, Action 4. Action 4 at the State Bureau.
Teenagers out in the job market for the first time will find their best chances for employment in the retail trade. It's not always the most glamorous kind of work, but if your work experience is limited to taking out the garbage for allowance money, then working in a fast food restaurant is about the best you can expect.
You can get job training through the CETA program, but funds for that, like everything else, have been cut this year, so there's not much of that available. The market is good for teenagers this year, but finding a job you'd want is a different matter.
I'd suggest that they not be too picky and realize that they can gain a lot from any work experience they have, and that next year, if you can tell an employer that I worked at this company or that company and that person will give you a good recommendation, then you're on your way.
From the cafeteria line to the unemployment line, first-timers can find a job if they look for it. Of course, if your father owns the store, that helps too. Ted Brown, Action 4.
On March 2nd, Governor George Nigh signed a bill allowing a new cancer treatment, immunoaugmentative therapy, or I.A.T, to come to Oklahoma. A medical journal said that bill, which allowed this man, Lawrence Burton, to bring I.A.T to our state, had made Oklahoma the butt of jokes among doctors nationwide. Readers were reminded that Oklahoma was the first state to permit the use of Laetrile. Recent studies have shown Laetrile has no positive effect in the treatment of cancer, and in fact, adds the poison cyanide to the system. But supporters of I.A.T say it's different from Laetrile. They say it could be the cure to one of the nation's most dreaded diseases. As required by the law Nigh signed, the State Board of Health approved new rules that license I.A.T manufacturers and require monitoring of I.A.T patients. The board still has a lot of questions about I.A.T, and they hope to talk to Burton at their next meeting in June. The author of the bill allowing I.A.T to come to Oklahoma is Carl Twidwell. His wife has cancer, and they've been pleased with the treatment Burton has given her. Twidwell had this statement about the board's actions.
I'm satisfied. I think the State Board of Health showed good intent by complying with the law that asked them to draft the licensing procedure within 60 days.
The physicians on the board emphasize that they're not endorsing I.A.T. They're merely setting up a process required by the governor and the legislature. They hope that process will determine once and for all whether I.A.T is a cure for cancer or just a hoax. Bill Ross, Action 4 at the State Health Department.
So tonight, I am asking the Congress to pass as soon as possible a constitutional amendment to require balanced federal budgets. This amendment will, of course, have to be ratified by 3/4 of the states. But I'm confident that the grassroots support for a balanced budget amendment is out there and will carry the day against the special interests.
Road. It was followed by a uniformed unit and an unmarked unit into the apartment project here, and the suspects reached a dead end in the apartment project, at which time the officers got out. A suspect came out with a shotgun and fired at the officers. There were a number of shots exchanged. 2 officers received injuries from the gunshots.
The number of drilling rigs at work in the United States has dropped 26% since the end of last year. And industry observers say the figures continue to drop every week. In North Dakota, the number decreased almost in half. Texas experienced a 28% decrease. Oklahoma showed the least decline so far this year, a 9.5% drop from 871 to 788 rigs at work. But in Oklahoma City, Dan King of Cimarron Programs Incorporated says his business is still strong.
I have not seen a slowdown, predominantly in our drilling funds at all, but I think that people are going to still invest money in the oil and gas business. They're just simply going to invest it with people they have confidence in, and the good oil companies are going to survive.
King points out, though, that a lot of people got into the business a year or two ago who weren't dedicated to finding oil and gas. A number of those firms have been squeezed out. King emphasized that the strong companies will survive. Ben McCain, Action 4, Oklahoma City.